Right, we now come to the urgent question. Alex Burghart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister to make a statement on the Government's response to the humble address agreed by this House on the 4th of February.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, last week the House made a humble address to His Majesty for the Government to disclose material surrounding the appointment of Peter Mandelson as Ambassador to the United States of America. On Monday, my right honourable friend, the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, updated the House on further action that the Government is taking. He confirmed that the Government will bring forward legislation to ensure that peerages can be removed from disgraced peers and that Peter Mandelson will be removed from the list of Privy Councillors. He also explained how we have changed the process for the relevant direct ministerial appointments, including politically appointed diplomatic roles. And my right honourable friend also set out other areas in which we recognise the need to go further, including around tightening transparency and lobbying. In that statement, my right honourable friend also set out how the Government was responding to the humble address motion, and I'm pleased to provide further update to the House today. Clear, Mr. Speaker, the Government will comply fully and publish documents as soon as possible. As I said in this House last week, we welcome both the principle and content of that motion, and we will deliver on it as soon as we can. As such, Government departments have been instructed to retain any material which may be relevant, and work is underway to identify documents which fall within scope of the motion. We will do so as soon as possible when the House returns from recess. In line with the motion passed by this House, where the Government considers documents may be prejudicial to UK national security or international relations, the Cabinet Office will refer this material to the Independent Intelligence and Security Committee. The Prime Minister has written to the ISC, and senior officials have met with the committee to discuss what the RSC requires in order to fulfil this role. Full resources, as I said in the House last week, will be made available to ensure that process happens. And we will work with the committee to explain the Cabinet Office's process for providing material relating to national security or international relations. The Government is very grateful to the ISC for their work and commits to full engagement with them to ensure timely and effective release. The House will also be aware of the statement from the Metropolitan Police regarding the ongoing police investigation. Now, that statement made clear, quite rightly, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, that the process to decide which documents should be published ultimately remains a matter for Parliament. That is absolutely right, we agree. But as you would expect, the Government rightly does not wish to release anything that may undermine an ongoing police investigation, and as such we are working with the police as they conduct their inquiries to manage this. Mr. Speaker, I think that is the right way forward, and I hope the House and you will agree. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, the Government continues to take this matter incredibly seriously, and given the nature of the issues at stake and the scope of material in play, we will comply fully and deliver this as quickly and transparently as possible. The Government will keep the House updated as it does so, and my right honourable friend, the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, will publish a written ministerial statement later today.
No, you brought me into it. I didn't really touch on it. Just to say that the Intelligence Committee is private and independent, and therefore I wouldn't like to see that they were blocked from information, because it would not affect any police investigation, because that information wouldn't go into the public arena. So I just want to be aware of that. And can I thank the Minister for coming? A WMS on something as important as this isn't personally good enough to me. I think it should have been brought to the House. All sides are interested, and I think it's right. This House should be informed personally. So I'm really pleased. I'm sorry he's got the short straw, but thank you he's here. Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I couldn't have put it better myself. But thank you. But thank you for granting this urgent question, without which honourable members would not have had a chance to question ministers before recess. The House obviously rises for recess having received very little in the way of information, so it's very important that we hear from the Minister today so that we can try and have some confidence in the process that's going forward. And simply put, the purpose of our question today is to try and elicit from the Government a commitment to give the House a timetable, and also to confirm, as I think the Minister may have done, that it intends to comply fully with the language in the humble address. And I say that, Mr. Speaker, because there's been briefing to the press from government sources this week that the government might try to reinterpret the address in some way. For the avoidance of doubt, were that to happen, the government would have to return to this House for another vote. Last week, the Prime Minister told us the process would have integrity because it was being led by the Cabinet Secretary and that any criticism or denigration of the Cabinet Secretary would not be right. This week, the political forces in Number 10 have been briefing that Sir Chris Wormald is to be replaced. What a turnaround. So will the Minister reassure the House that any change in the Cabinet Secretary will not delay disclosure or publication of the documents which the House has required? There are a number of further questions that I'll put quickly to the Minister, Mr. Speaker. First, has the government completed its scoping exercise, and if not, by when does it intend to do so? Second, where the government proposes to release material to the Intelligence and Security Committee rather than directly to the House, will it provide public updates to the House that this has been done? Third, in respect of documents withheld at the request of the Metropolitan Police, will the government tell us the precise legal mechanism being relied upon and commit to publish these documents in full when the police no longer request them to be withheld? Fourth, will ministers publish a Keeling schedule-style register of withheld or delayed documents setting out the category, the reason for non-disclosure and the expected release date for each? There are strong precedents for this. Fifth, at the dispatch box last week, the Minister told me he would write to myself and the member for Skipton about the Palantir contract. He's not yet done so. Please will he confirm that he will this week? Last and separately, will the Minister commit to publishing all documentation relating to the nomination of Matthew Doyle as a peer? This is now a matter of acute public interest. I will sit down, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will appreciate that confidence in this government's integrity is very low. I hope he will comply in full.
Minister.
Can I thank the right honourable gentleman for that? Let me try and rattle through those questions. Firstly, and most importantly, we will comply fully. Made that clear in the House. So the government accepted both the principle and content of the motion. We'll comply fully on it. There is a large, this touches on the scoping question, there is obviously a large amount of material potentially in play here, much broader than other humble addresses. That's not a criticism, that's just a factual observation of how long it's going to take to get through this. So the scoping has begun, and we are working, the Cabinet Office is working through that scoping material. As I say, I will update the House as soon as I can with furthermore. We hope to publish the first tranche of this when the House comes back from recess. But as I say, that is being worked through on scoping. The conversations with the Metropolitan Police, as I say, are absolutely, as the Speaker pointed out, have the primacy of this place at heart. But we also, as you would expect, not want to prejudice an ongoing police investigation, so we are just working our way through that. With regard to the Cabinet Secretary that the right honourable gentleman mentioned, obviously it wouldn't be appropriate for a Cabinet Office Minister to talk about the Cabinet Secretary or individual... well, thankfully, I'm no longer an advisor, and I'm a Cabinet Office Minister, so it would not be appropriate for a Cabinet Office Minister to talk about the Cabinet Secretary. But let me reassure the House that the Cabinet Office is working hard on this. It is working diligently to do so. That process is ongoing, so any speculation around that does not affect the process that is going through. On Palantir, the right honourable gentleman mentioned this. I did commit to write to him. I have spoken to officials about that. I promise we will get that to him. Obviously, that there was an urgent question on this as well. I think that the MOD took that updated, but I promise I will come back. I will come back to him on that. And finally, he touched on Lord Doyle. Obviously, that is outside the scope of this humble address and outside the scope of the papers. So the urgent question on that does not touch upon that.
Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Parliament is rightly focusing its attention on Peter Mandelson, but along with accusations of other heinous crimes, during his time as trade envoy to Singapore, Vietnam, China and Hong Kong in 2010, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor passed extremely sensitive material on to Epstein and his accomplices. Isn't it time that, as well as Peter Mandelson, we called on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to answer to both the police and to Parliament?
Can I thank you for that? Look, everyone in this House has been sickened and dismayed at the revelations from all of the Epstein papers that have come through and in relation to what the Honourable Lady just said. Obviously, that is outside the scope of this humble address, and that is a matter for the Palace to respond to.
Minister, sorry, Liberal Democrat spokesperson Bobby Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The events of recent weeks have diminished people's faith in politics substantially. It was already at an all-time low, and it's confirmed the worst of people's suspicions about how everything works and punctured the optimism of those who believed in better. Now, at the centre of all this are the victims, and their bravery is twofold. Firstly, in retelling their trauma, and secondly, in taking on the world's most powerful men and all those who aided and legitimised them. Now, the humble address passed by this place now stands as a test of transparency and a test of parliamentary authority. And I think people will demand answers, and they deserve answers, swiftly. They will not stand for endless consultation, reviews and deliberation. And so can the government confirm when will the government bring forward legislation so that Peter Mandelson's peerage can be revoked? What is their deadline for releasing the necessary files? And who in the government will be held responsible if that deadline is not met?
Can I thank him for that? And he's absolutely right that it should be victims that remain at the heart of this. In answer to his question on legislation to strip Lord Mandelson of his peerage, that will come forward, and broader reform of the process for the House of Lords and removal, that will come forward again as soon as possible. It will be in government time, as I committed to last week, and we will bring that forward after the recess. In terms of who's accountable, obviously it's a Cabinet Office matter, so the Cabinet Office are accountable, but obviously the Prime Minister is accountable for this as well. But as I say, we will comply fully with the motion, and we will publish it, and we will publish material as soon as we can.
Rachel Hopkins.
Mr. Speaker, just over a week or so ago I expressed my horror at what had passed and was very shocked that you couldn't remove a peerage from someone who had brought the other place into disrepute. So I'm very pleased to see how swiftly the government moved on bringing in legislation to do so. But does the Minister agree with me that full compliance with regards to transparency of records as soon as possible is vitally important to ensure we rebuild trust in politics and politicians?
Minister.
Yes, absolutely do. And as I say, we absolutely will comply fully, and we will comply as quickly as possible. And I also, on a side issue, completely share her point about the removal process for the Lords. I think it's, for the other place. I think it's inexplicable that that's still the case. And the sooner we can update that, the better.
So Christopher Cho.
Mr. Speaker, does the Minister share my concern about the revelations relating to the connection between Mandelson and the Chinese motor manufacturer BYD, which now says that the United Kingdom is the largest destination for its electric vehicles? Will he also answer as to whether he is preventing the Secretary of State for Energy and Net Zero from disclosing the conduct which he had and the conversations which he had when he visited China last year and signed agreements which remain secret as far as this House is concerned?
Minister.
Thank you. I mean, look, there's no part of the revelations around Lord Mandelson that I'm not dismayed at and appalled at. So that includes all of that. On the broader point about that he raises there, I'm afraid I'm not across the detail of that, but that's one for the Secretary of State team to reply to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There continues to be significant public interest in the £240 million Palantir Technologies government contract. Could the Minister confirm if any government ministers were present at the Palantir celebration party yesterday, and if so, who? And can he commit also to ensuring that all materials and records relating to this contract award decision are published?
Minister.
I have no idea is the answer to the first part of her question. And the second part of her question, as I have now promised the Honourable Gentleman twice, we will give a written reply and a full reply about the Palantir contract that concerns the Cabinet Office as soon as possible.
Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Public confidence in this process is absolutely vital. And whilst the Intelligence and Security Committee is fiercely independent, is it not a matter of fact that it is dominated by Labour peers and Labour MPs, and the chairman is appointed by a Labour Prime Minister? But on a point of detail on the Cabinet Office involvement, how will this inquiry avoid a conflict of interest between the Cabinet Office employees who staff the ISC and the Cabinet Office themselves, and also on the legal advice from the Cabinet Office? Would that not conflict with the Cabinet legal advisers to the ISC? Is it not the case that the Intelligence and Security Committee should have its own budget to recruit its own independent legal advisers separate from the Cabinet Office?
Minister.
Can I thank him for that? I mean, as I said in the House last week, and I think in response to a question from the former Attorney General, the full resourcing will be given to the ISC to do that. And the Cabinet Office and the ISC, I take his point about how you work that through between the two and between the two teams. That is being worked out very closely with the ISC and the Cabinet Office at the moment, and I'm confident that can be resolved. I would just point out, though, he pointed about the political composition of the ISC. I think it's fair to say that no one in this House really would want an implication that the ISC was not impartial, responsible, and entirely qualified to do this. And that's why I think it was an important addition last week that we had the ISC stated in there. So I think it's important to have that on the record.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that the Prime Minister has recognised that he must do more to strengthen standards in public life, including by enhancing vetting for political appointments, but also a broader review of the lobbying system. Would the Minister care to explain a bit more about what the government is planning to address when it comes to lobbying of MPs and public officials?
Minister.
Can I thank you for that? The Chief Secretary set this out to the House on Monday, and further detail will come forward soon. But I do think this is an important part, again, of restoring trust, and that it can't just be us reacting to the specific of the Mandelson revelation. It needs to be a much broader position about how lobbying, how transparency of our politics is carried out. Because our politics, and this shouldn't be a political point, because this is all governments and all parties at different points. Our politics is at a low point in public trust at the moment. We need to rebuild that. They said, well, whose fault was that? If I was you, I wouldn't be shouting that, to be honest, after the last 14 years. But
Order. One of us is going to sit down. It's not going to be me. Don't. I don't need these side comments. They are coming more often. You're now a front bencher. More restraint is required from you. As an ex-military officer, I expect so much better. Come on. Oh, Gallup.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, just in conclusion, yes. Sorry, in his specific, the Chief Secretary set those out on Monday. Further details will come forward, and we will tighten transparency regulations as well.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I should say first up that I respect enormously the Right Honourable Member for the Wrekin, but I do disagree with him about the independence of the Intelligence and Security Committee. It is very much a committee of this House, and it is independent as such. But the ISC is awaiting receipt of papers from the government, and the committee has requested that those papers relating to the vetting and appointment of Lord Mandelson are prioritised for release to the committee. Can the Minister confirm that they will be prioritised? And also, can the Minister give an early indication of the number of documents that are expected to be passed to the committee, such that the ISC can determine what the resource requirements are so that it can undertake the task? Thank you.
Minister.
Can I thank him for that? As I say, scoping is underway. I can't give a precise number at the moment because, look, this is potentially a large amount of information covering a large period of time as well. So I can't give a date on that, I'm afraid. But as I say, the Cabinet Office is working closely with the ISC to try and deliver this as quickly as possible and to deliver it in the right priority as well.
Lewis Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister mentioned about strengthening the process around direct ministerial appointments. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about that and how quickly he believes those strengthened processes will be in place.
Can I thank you for that? Yes, the Chief Secretary set this out on Monday. What we're looking at here is the enhanced security vetting, which comes in when you have a direct appointment. And the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary have set out plans to reform that. That will come in, you'll have to correct me, if it hasn't already come in, I think it comes in very quickly, but it will come in as soon as possible. So we tighten that up going forward.
Bob Black.
Speaker. Earlier this week, the Health Secretary released his WhatsApp messages and emails that he'd exchanged with Lord Mandelson. Can the Minister update the House on what instruction has been given to Cabinet Ministers to follow or not follow the initiative by the Health Secretary?
The Prime Minister has made it very clear that there needs to be a managed process that the Cabinet and Ministers agree with, and that they will be published. They will be published in the right fashion, and it's important there is a proper process around that, because we need to agree. We need to agree how that happens across the Cabinet and across Ministers, and that is what's going to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Too often, women particularly raise concerns or sound alarm about concerning behaviour, and their concerns are too often dismissed or unheard. So can the Minister set out what further actions this government will take to ensure that victims and survivors of sexual abuse are heard by those in power?
Minister, you want to?
Can I thank her for that? And she's absolutely right. This is a broader problem than the specific issue that Mandelson highlights, and it's a much broader issue in our politics. The Prime Minister made really clear on Monday and at the dispatch box yesterday that this needs to change, and that he will drive that cultural change through. And I would also point out, obviously, the very wide-ranging, groundbreaking violence against women and girls strategy this government is publishing, and which, having worked with the Prime Minister as long as I have, I know he cares about passionately and is determined to drive through.
Richard Tash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister confirm that on the, with regard to the legislation for the removal of peers, that Matthew Doyle will be on the first list to be removed, given that he shouldn't have been appointed in this first place? And secondly, can he confirm the position with regard to disappearing WhatsApp messages and deleted messages? Can they technically be retrieved from the system in order to be given to the Intelligence and Security Committee?
Minister.
Can I thank you for that? On legislation, as I say, the government is looking at legislation that looks at the broader question of how you remove people from the Lords, rather than just in specific cases. So it will be broad legislation, and the sooner it comes to the House that we can consider that, the better. On the second point, he raises a very interesting question. I'm afraid I really don't know the answer to it, but I imagine it's one that a lot of people are considering. But I will come back to him.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And there are plenty of times when standards of behaviour of holders of political office at all levels of political office have fallen below what is acceptable. No, none of us have a moral high ground on this. Every party has had issues. Some dealt with quietly, some dealt with in the court pages, the court reports. And whilst my question is to the Minister, I want all of us to reflect on this. How do we work collectively to make this better, to make sure that no woman or no victim is left unsupported, and that we actually collectively manage to make a way of changing?
Minister. Can I thank you for that? She makes the point incredibly powerfully, and it is a point that we have, I think, somewhat lost in the discussion about technicalities around the process on this. That is the central point we should be trying to address. As I say, the Prime Minister has committed to drive through that change and to make sure this government reflects that. We are bringing forward, as I say, the violence against women and girls strategy, which is groundbreaking and long overdue, but there needs to be much broader cultural change as well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister said that the Cabinet Secretary's integrity should not be questioned, and then we immediately briefed out that he was going to be sacked, having been given the responsibility for overseeing the handing over of the documents, which could be detrimental to a Prime Minister who's so desperate to save his political life. He's already thrown his closest advisors, communications and Chief of Staff under a bus. How can we know that there isn't a link between that very integrity, which the Prime Minister highlighted, and then the desire to remove him from a role in which he might be at risk of removing this Prime Minister?
Look, as I said, I'm not going to comment on the Cabinet Secretary and that role. It's not appropriate for Cabinet Office Minister to do that, but I reassure him that the process is underway throughout the Cabinet Office and that is unaffected by other matters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank you personally for granting this UQ, but can I also thank the Minister for his responses, because this is a really important issue that people in my constituency of Harlow and across the country are obviously very interested in. Can he assure my constituents that this process will be fully transparent? And can I also add my support to the member for Paisley and Renfrewshire South for what she said about making it important that people in power listen to the victims of these terrible crimes?
Yes, absolutely. As I say, we will be fully transparent. We will comply fully with the motion, and we will do so as quickly as possible. And I think his second point, as I say, is the central point that we need to return to throughout this debate and going forward.
Christine Chard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister today for his assurances that these reports and the publications will come forward as soon as possible. But I'm sure he can pick up from the tenor in the House that many of us are concerned about public confidence in this place, in us being undermined. And every day that we don't have those reports, there is more speculation, there is more doubt heaped on all of us and on the government. The government needs to be stronger, I believe, so would he commit to keeping us up to date regularly and giving us a date as soon as he can that the public can expect to have their own ability to see these published papers?
Of course, yes, I do agree. And as I said in my initial reply, we expect to be able to start publishing this material as soon as possible after the recess, and I hope we can do that as quickly as we can. But just on the broader point she makes about public confidence, I think this is an essential point of it, and it's why I've tried to emphasise, and indeed last week in the debate, as heated as it occasionally got, that we want to comply with this and we want to get to the bottom of this. There's no one on this side that doesn't want to get to the bottom of the lies Mandelson told and the problems that led to, and there is a matter of broader public confidence and trust. And we need to demonstrate that this House is not reflected by the acts of Mandelson et al., but it is a broader House of doing public good and public service. And I think this is an important part of getting to that.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The motion passed by the House requires the government to provide details of any payments made to Lord Mandelson. There's no national security or international relations issue in doing so. So will the Minister tell the House now how much money did Mandelson get and what's the government doing to get it back?
I think he's referring to severance pay, is he? I think the Foreign Office are providing an update on this. That isn't something I'm afraid I can provide an answer to.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In September last year, we had an emergency debate at the request of the member for Goole and Pocklington on the sacking of Peter Mandelson. And I said at the time that the government should be turning Lord Mandelson inside out because someone had politically fatal compromising material on him for his whole time as ambassador. The government simply said, well, he's been sacked. Does the government not regret carrying out that due diligence in September last year rather than waiting for more compromising information to drop?
Minister.
I think it's safe to say there's a number of things we regret around this issue. But look, as I say, the key bit here is that we will comply with the humble address as fully, and we will comply with it transparently and as quickly as possible.
David.
Mr. Llefarydd, public confidence is so important, and the ministerial code requires that ministers, including the Prime Minister, to uphold the highest possible standards of propriety. Given the evidence clearly shows what the Prime Minister knew, the appointment did not meet these standards. So can the Minister confirm whether the Prime Minister will refer himself to the independent adviser on ministerial standards?
Minister. I mean, the first point to make is that the Prime Minister has strengthened the powers of the independent adviser, rightly so, and that the independent adviser now has a more central role in complying with standards. But that, I'm afraid, that doesn't relate quite to what's in the humble address.
John Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a former journalist, I know that the Fourth Estate don't always get things right, but they're not in the habit of making things up. What then are we to make of reports from Dan Hodges in the Mail and the Mail on Sunday that the Prime Minister is attempting a last-ditch attempt to limit the amount of documentation that is released under our humble address? There's no smoke without fire, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
I really wouldn't believe everything you read in the press. Let me be very clear from this dispatch box. Let me be very, very clear. Let me be very clear. The government is complying fully and transparently, and it is working very hard to do so. And any reports to the contrary are just not right.
But the best objective.
Thank you, Mr.
Speaker. The issues of surrounding Lord Mandelson and Lord Doyle and their proximity to paedophiles is now intertwined. On the 2nd of January 2026, I asked a written question to the Cabinet Office asking them to publish the findings of the internal investigation that took place prior to the granting of the peerage for Lord Doyle. That investigation was carried out by the former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, but also by his deputy, Jill Cuthbertson, who is now the interim Chief of Staff. An investigation is currently underway. There's already been an investigation. Will the government commit to publishing the findings of that investigation, given that it has already investigated this issue?
The Prime Minister gave his answer on that yesterday, and Number 10 have provided further information on it, but that doesn't relate to the humble address.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister is well regarded on both sides of the House, so I'm hoping he'll give us a clear and honest answer, and I'm sure he will do. In his long years working for the Prime Minister, and both as advisor, staffer, and more latterly as a minister, did he voice any concerns in private post the vetting process on the appointment of Lord Mandelson?
Minister.
I mean, I wasn't involved in any of that matter at all, so the answer simply is no.
Luke Evans.
Further to the question from the member for Harrow East about the WhatsApps, the Minister seemed to suggest it wasn't an orderly process. So is there any reprimand for the Health Secretary? And second of all, will those WhatsApps between all ministers and Peter Mandelson be released? Because that was part of the humble address when it referred specifically to electronic communications.
I would never want to imply it wasn't an orderly process. Let me correct myself. Let me correct myself there. The point I was making is that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet Secretary and the Cabinet Office have made clear that all of the above, that the that ministers need to abide by the process we're doing, and that will be done collectively. The scope of that obviously is set out by the humble address, and the breadth of it is being identified. Electronic communications is covered within the humble address, so that will then be looked at by the Cabinet Office in terms of breadth and scope of it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister said earlier that he and the government want to comply fully, transparently and as quickly as possible with the humble address, which I think we can all agree is exactly what should be doing. But the question of when things will be released is vital. These documents must be released, as he said, as quickly as possible. But to date, so far, we don't get any more information other than when the time is right, effectively. Is this because the Minister does not know or doesn't want to say? And if it's because he does not know, can he give us an example or an expectation of the timescale? And if he doesn't want to say, can he say why he doesn't want to say?
Minister.
As soon as possible after recess.
Jim Chung.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Procedure, can I first of all thank the Minister for his answers to the incredibly difficult questions. Procedure is very important in this place, and indeed is why democracy still reigns. You, Mr. Speaker, have epitomised what's the right way to do it, and I think the House recognises the standards that you set for us and everyone in this House. The general public have a huge interest in this issue and have been led to expect detail to be forthcoming. So will the Minister not ensure that government holds itself to the highest standards expected and provide the detail to enable all in this House and outside of this House to move forward whilst learning lessons and striving for true accountability at all levels? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, and that should be the guiding principle as we go through this. And the test of it at the end should be whether not only have we complied with the motion, obviously we will, but has this helped? But has this helped to restore transparency and trust in the public?
Jeremy Wright.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm very grateful to you for calling me, and I apologise I missed the Minister's opening remarks, but I did hear him endorse the integrity of the ISC, and can I entirely agree with that? I think it's very important that I say from these benches, just as my committee colleague did from the Liberal Democrat benches, that we have full confidence in the integrity of the Labour members of the ISC to do the job that the House has commissioned us to do. But can I put something to him as to the problems the government now has? It seems to me that the potential problems the government has in complying with the humble address are, first of all, potentially in the volume of material that it may cover, and secondly, in what the Metropolitan Police wish us to hold back for the purposes of their investigation. In relation to the first, does he agree, as my right honourable friend put to him, that if the government seeks to moderate the terms of the humble address in any way to take account of that volume, it must come back to the House for its consent to do so? And does he agree in relation to the material the Metropolitan Police may be concerned about, that because that material will not be made public if it is submitted to the ISC, there is no reason to slow down the process of referral of documents to my committee, simply because of concerns the police may have that if made public, that material may prejudice a future trial?
Minister.
Yes, I think firstly, can I completely endorse the point he made at the beginning about the independence and integrity of the ISC. But I think he identifies two very fair points, by the way. And I say that not as a reason, not to comply, etc. That is just the reality of the complexity of what we're dealing with. The volume, as I say, is larger than another humble address. As I say, not a complaint, but a statement of fact. But there's no attempt to narrow that scope, and there's no attempt to narrow against the motion of that. The process, as I say, the Cabinet Office is doing is to define that scope and to sort of harness what falls within it. His second point on the Metropolitan Police, I think, is well made. And as I say, our desire, the recognition of both the Met and the government, obviously, is that Parliament retains the right, ultimately, to publish material. But it's obviously the act of a responsible government that wants to not do so in a way that will prejudice an ongoing live case that we would all like to see reach conclusion. So, look, we're working through them. They are complicated matters, but he raises them in exactly the right fashion.
Right, so that completes the urgent question. I have to notify the House, in accordance with the Royal Assent Act 1967, that the King has signified his royal assent to the following acts: licensing hours,